there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of Pastatime with the Scariest Podcast.
Woo.
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're back with what will probably be our final episode of Pastatime.
Yeah, we're thinking so.
Yeah, we're changing things up. We're not going to do Pastatime anymore. We're thinking of some other things that we could do in the meantime, since we are running low on story time stories. So I'll just put this out there. If you folks have any stories that you want to share with us, not Pastatime stories, but actual, homegrown horror experiences, close encounters with some true crime things or some paranormal things or spiritual things that have happened to you, send it to our email, storytime@scariest.com, or any of our social media, and share it with us so that we can share it with the rest of the spooky fam, because we are running low. Adam just checked earlier today, and we only have a few left for story time.
I think we have enough to do story time next week, which is the plan. And then after that, I'm not sure. So, like Robin mentioned, we've talked about different things that we could do for the show that comes out on Friday that we do live stream on Wednesday. I don't think we're ready to make any announcements, but we do have some ideas that are kind of exciting. What I will say is if we get into one of the new ideas and we wind up really liking it, we'll probably stick with that going forward. But if we continue to get stories, if we get homegrown horror sent to us, we will definitely drop storytime episodes still. So maybe just on a different frequency or a different cadence, maybe once a month or something along those lines where we have more stories to give. But we'll see. We're going to play around with what we do with this second non-topic episode for each week, because we still want to make sure we have content that's coming out on Fridays and that we're streaming on Wednesdays. But we'll figure it out. We have some fun ideas, and I'm actually really excited to play around with some of the stuff, because this isn't really like season 2 of Scariest or anything, but it's the first break we've taken, or we've taken 3 to taken.
I was going
I
to
get
say
confused. Liam Neeson screwed everything up for me. But yeah, it's something where we got time to think about what we wanted to see the show do going forward, basically, and based off of the fact that we just don't have a lot of stories to go through. We're going to be forced to change it up, which is probably a good thing in the long run. So.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing the same thing for almost 5 years, so it's changing it up. We're doing something different.
We've had so many consistent episodes of Storytime. We've never missed a Storytime simply because we've always had stories. We did create Pastatime because we were getting low on stories for Storytime. But it was still of the cadence where we could do it every 2 weeks, and it was pretty still a month, 2 month backlog.
Right.
So nowadays though, it's we'll get 2 or 3 stories in one day and then nothing for a few weeks. So we get a lot of things that have been sent to us from people who have already sent in, because the spooky friends out there are amazing, and they've sent us the stories that they've promised to send. I have more. I'll send them at some point. I think some point has come and gone at this point. So we'll probably look into also doing things where you folks can share the podcast with your friends or family, whether it's through your social medias or whatever. And we used to do giveaways a lot, in fact, to encourage the podcast growth. We haven't done one of those in a few years, in fact. So we'll figure out some rewards and some stuff that we can send out, and probably initiate another one of those contests, which would be super fun to do. So, but like Robin said, this is going to be the final Pastatime that we're going to do. So I guess we should just jump into it and get started. I think Robin's going first with this one that's up on the screen, so take it away.
All right. So my first story is going to be a little long. It's titled, I Think My Family is Cursed by Bram, the Toy Maker. It's like Bram Stoker.
I think Bram because of that stupid movie.
But I think Bram has an H in it, right? B-R-A-H-M?
Probably, yeah.
Bram?
Let's go with Bram. Sure.
Okay, Bram. We're going to say Bram. All right. So this is written by Jubmir Milik and Lily Connor. So thank you for writing this. All right. So it begins. The story I'm about to tell you is crazy. All right. Well, it's crazy already. You told us. I had the weirdest, creepiest experience last weekend, and I think people like you want to hear. The curse...
You don't know me.
The curse must have happened over 300 years ago, but for us, it started when my dad and I found a great-great-great-great grandfather's diary.
Sounds pretty great.
Well, kind of. Anyway, there are a few things I should explain first. My family are formerly from the Balkans and moved to America a few generations ago. Our family immigrated with everyone who traveled from their village. Maybe like 30 people went to live in America in a place called Grimville, where they continued to live together for years until one day, the great-great-great-great-grandfather, Edward, moved states with his family, and we have never known why until upon finding his diary. I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you should know that my family are highly superstitious people. My grandmother and grandfather would always tell the stories of horrors in the woods, visits from gypsies, and deathly omens. There was always a reason for something strange or unfortunate to happen, and that reason was always supernatural. I believed the stories as a kid, but these days I can see where coincidence and paranoia collide. Even so, two stories stuck with me 40 years later. There was a rule at my grandparents' house: never leave the window open at night. My parents didn't care for this rule as it wasn't something we did in our house, but they always respected it. One weekend I stayed at my grandparents' one weekend.
That's a weird name.
Yeah, that's their grandparents' name. One weekend, I stayed at my grandparents' place while my parents were out of town. I was about 6 years old. It'd been a hot day and the house was stuffy, so I opened my window in the afternoon to let the cool breeze inside. I started playing with my toys and completely forgot about the window. A few hours later, my grandfather came in to get me for dinner, saw the window, and exploded. Like literally, just blood everywhere.
That's gross. This is a scary story.
He was furious. I've never seen him so mad. He slammed it in a flurry, saying it was quote-unquote dangerous. Then he sat me on the bed and told me of the toy maker. In quotes, "Bram is a man who makes toys for little boys and girls, like you," he said to me. "He places the toy on your windowsill. It may seem like a lovely gift, but it's when you pick it up that he catches you with his claw," end quote. So then it continues to go on. "He took me by the chin and made me look him in the eye. I could feel his hands shaking. All that is left in your stead is a doll of your likeness, and you are never seen again. And it's said on windy nights when the clouds cover the moon, you can hear the lost children wail." He lets go of my chin. "Never leave your window open again." He stood up, walked to the door before turning back. "Remember, Bram the toy maker is not your friend." And then, to make his point, he left me to bed without dinner. What a dick.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep a wink. What kid could? I stopped playing with my toys for a while after that, and I never left the window open at night.
I would just assume that those toys are all people who had been taken by the toy maker.
That makes sense. Not at my grandparents' and not at my own house either. Much later, in my teenage years, when I would tell this story to my friends, no one had heard this old wives' tale, not even my friends from the Balkans. The other story that sticks with me happened a few years later when I was 9 years old. My grandfather had just passed away. At his funeral, I remember my uncles carrying the coffin out of my grandparents' house to be buried. When, just before crossing the threshold of the front door, they stopped, talked amongst themselves, then backed up and turned around 180 degrees. My grandma was standing next to me, and I looked up at her. I remember her face, the usual warmth and every wrinkle, but not today. She was solemnly nodding as the men turned around. "Grandma, what are they doing?" "They're making sure his legs come out of the door first." "Why?" She looked down at me, surprised I didn't understand. I still remember the unnerving intensity in her eyes. "To make sure he doesn't come back, of course, or he'll take us with him." What the fuck? There's a
lot of shit happening in this story.
And she walked away, leaving me there alone again. I couldn't sleep for weeks, worried my grandfather would come to visit me. My parents would read me scary stories to tell in the dark occasionally, and boy, were they regretting that now. Every night I expected to hear heavy thuds on the stairs to my room, imagining his legs stiff with rigor mortis. To see his face as he rounded the doorway, sunken cheeks, white eyes a home for flies, blue skin puffy or worse, rotting away, mouth frozen open in eternal despair. Over time, I forgot, and bedtime became less scary. Nowadays, I chalk these superstitions and scary tales up to getting your kids to behave. I'm sure there's some psych study on it, but then we found that diary. My dad asked me recently to help him clear out my grandparents' place. My grandma died 3 years ago, bless her, and my parents finally decided to turn their place into an Airbnb. So last week, my dad and I had spent days sorting through their furniture, figuring out what was to sell or keep, listing what repairs would need to be done. You get it. We were almost done in the attic when I noticed the freaky
sex doll my grandparents kept.
When I noticed the creaky floorboards. It was in a spot that had been completely covered in boxes before. I got up close to see if the floorboard would come loose, and lo and behold, it did. I immediately began thinking about adventure movies and imagined finding treasure, expensive antiques, something worth a fortune. I pulled up the floorboard, but all that was underneath was a small wooden chest. Locked. The chest looked old, worn at the edges, cracks along the panels. Exciting, but not quite what I was hoping for. What were you hoping for finding under the floorboards? Like a
heart
body?
Of someone he had murdered, apparently.
My dad had never seen it before either and didn't remember his parents with it. So, our curiosity tells us to open the box. If it's a Dybbuk box, though, like, bad idea.
It's going to have Gwyneth Paltrow's severed head in it. We all know that.
There's no way it's that big. I mean, it was under a floorboard, right? Can you fit a head under a floorboard?
I think she's pretty famous for having a tiny head.
Is it? Is she?
Yeah.
Is she?
Her
No,
head's
you're...
the size, like, make a fist. That's how big her head is.
Shut up. I go to pick it up, and it is ice cold to the touch. The kind of cold that almost feels like it's burning, as it had just come out of a freezer. I drop it in surprise, and the damn thing gives me a splinter before landing on the floor and breaking open.
Oh, shit.
A splinter that I still have, by the way, that won't heal. Anyway, inside the chest, we found the diary. Sure, we were a bit underwhelmed, but we knew it would interest Mom, so we took it with us. Okay, that night over dinner, we pulled it out and read it. Now, let me tell you, we did not finish our food. Not after what we read. As I said, the diary was written by my great-great-great-great-grandfather Edward in the late 18th century, from what we can tell. It recounts his involvement in the murder of Bram, a toy maker, and his wife, Rose. Eerie, right? The diary is long and in the old native language, so I'm just going to summarize what he wrote about. It took my dad, Mom, and I a few hours and a bit of checking the dictionary to fully understand. So when Edward, his family, and the 30 or so people from our small town in the Balkans were boarding the ship to America, they met Bram and Rose, who happened to be moving to the same village, Grimville. They had recently inherited a manor there, so they joined Edward's party. Though friendly, Edward notes that no one knew anything about them except that Bran was an intelligent and talented woodcarver. Oh, that's why the wooden box with the splinter. Grimville...
if he's a good woodcarver, why the fuck was there a splinter?
Oh, that's very true.
Seems deliberate. It's going to come back in the end.
Grimville was a small village located on the outskirts of a forest, quiet and desolate. It had been abandoned by its former tenants and was practically empty. It was only a few houses clustered together, and at the center they turned one house into a tavern, but it was all they needed. Edward doesn't say why they went to that particular village, only that they had been told there was a distance from other towns and privacy, which the villagers valued greatly. When the party landed, Rose and Bram disappeared to their new home in the woods, immediately taking to the discretion the large, secluded manor provided. Bram took to set up a toy shop in their house, while Rose kept to their bedroom. She was pregnant at the time. He talks of how the women of the village found it rude that she didn't spend time with them, and so gossip followed. There was a nasty rumor that Rose was having an affair under Bram's nose, as while he worked downstairs at night, she was sometimes seen staring out the window with a dark figure looming over her shoulder, whispering in her ear. It's a fucking demon! It's a demon. She's talking to a demon. Or a vampire, Bram Stoker.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why they picked the name.
One day, some men were hunting in the woods when they saw Rose in her nightgown, surrounded by candles, symbols drawn in the dirt at her feet, chanting. This was during the witch hunting hysteria, so of course the men go back to the village and tell everyone. Edward says he was in the tavern at the time, and at the first mention of witchcraft, the men had everyone's attention. The elders cited the dangers of an independent woman's mischievous nature. Fresh rumors went flying. Parents were scared for their children, and within minutes the village had formed a mob, so fueled by liquid courage and fear, they gathered their wits and weapons and went to Bram's manor. Bram was working when the villagers burst through the door. A toy doll splayed out on the table, waiting for him to attach the limbs and make it whole. The mob knocked his work aside and rounded on Bram. He tried to calm them as Rose came from upstairs to see what was wrong, with her hands on her pregnant belly. Oof, this is bad. They accused her of witchcraft, which, of course, they both denied. But it didn't matter what they said. It was too late for them. The villagers had made up their minds. They dragged the couple outside and threatened Rose that if she did not admit guilt, they would cut Bram to pieces. Protecting her baby, she refused, and they kept their word. Edward says the hilt of a blade was pushed into his hand, and stepping forward, he welcomed it. He described how they had started with Bram's arms and blah, 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 all this gross stuff. Oh man, they just chop him up. Rose begged them to stop, claiming their innocence, but he says that after a while they stopped hearing her, as if she wasn't there. They could not hear the screams, only the tearing of flesh. Ugh. He wrote, quote, "A hunter does not see the animal once it is caught, only the meal in front of him," end quote. That's fucked up. During this torture, one of the elders, Edward calls her an old gypsy woman, entered Bram's house to look for something. So, one of the elders, he calls her an old gypsy woman.
She entered Bram's house.
Cool. Eventually, once Bram had lost much of his body, just an empty sack on the ground, they turned to Rose, and their hunger for violence not yet satiated. Rose's silence said it all. She knew what was to come, and she did nothing to sway their captors. Edward said to look in her eyes and was to see the devil himself. Wait, I feel like Edward looked her in the eyes and saw the devil himself. He's saying,
like, looking her in the eyes was to see the devil himself.
Yeah, it was written very strangely. She did not speak as they tied her to a stake. Oh, they're going to burn her. And when they lit the fire, her voice could be heard by all. Edward described her voice as tangling with unearthly sounds, demonic voices outside of the range of human vocal cords, screeching and wailing. And yet they murdered her.
Yeah, I was going to say that happens when you
just
get set
before
on fire.
Her last breath, she swore a curse on them for their heinous judgment, calling upon Lilith to avenge their deaths. Oh, so she did.
I was going to say, she's calling on Lilith. It's like she really wants them to feel the wrath.
As Rose's charred body crumpled on the stake, the old gypsy woman came out of the house holding some papers. She had found notes in the bedroom written by Rose, incantations to drive out a foul demon. The demon had told her its name was Lilith, an evil demonic night monster, horrible threat to women in childbirth and children. So, because they killed her, she was like, nah, you know what?
Instead of fighting this thing off, because she had a kid.
Yeah.
She's just like, hey, you know that thing that's out there that was coming for me? Fuck these guys up.
The reason for their escape from the old continent was a ritual gone wrong with Rose. Oh, shit. She accidentally summoned a demon during the seance who got attached to her. After that, their house became haunted. That is why they decided to go so far away. Afterward, the villagers dared not approach either body. The gypsy implored everyone to bury them, saying that if they were not given a proper burial, the curse would take root. That in Bram's final moments, he had crawled his way to the manor, and now he had to be removed legs first, lest his spirit return. Oh, that makes sense. The bodies must be placed in deep graves. Otherwise, the horror would live on. But the people shut themselves inside, barring windows and locking doors. The village was silent as their consciences had been earlier. Edward, in his home, cannot face himself. His mind reeled from the bloodlust.
From the Bud Light that night.
His mind reeled from the bloodlust of the village, the atrocities he had committed. As the night darkened, he could not escape the blood on his hands, and try as he might, they would not get clean. Guilt overtook him, so he decided to take on the responsibility of burying the dead. Exiting his home, only the creatures of the night saw him walk to the manor. Foxes, owls, rats. It seemed all had come to bear witness to his guilt. Quietly, he dug a grave next to Bram and Rose's manor, as deep as he could go. I mean, hopefully it was at least 6 foot deep. 6 feet deep?
I mean, 6 foot is normal, so I would imagine I would go 10, maybe 12.
He picked up what little remained of Rose and, to his horror, felt some stick to his hands. Ignoring the nausea building in his stomach, he shook as he placed her. He then turned to find where Bram's body lay. As he walked, he noticed the squelch of mud beneath his boots. The mud was made not from water, but from blood mixing with the dirt. It sucked at his shoes, releasing eerie gurgles with each step. Ew, gross. Turning his fracturing mind away, his eyes searched. Half an arm here, a foot there, a hand, but no Bram. Instead, a trail of blood smeared across the ground that led towards the manor. Edward followed the trail, and sure enough, just as the gypsy had said, Bram's torso was located inside the manor. I can't imagine how. He would have been in so much pain to use his arms and legs. I can't even think about it. Edward's entry is hasty here. Clearly, he was terrified just writing this down. So while they're reading this, the handwriting's getting, hectic, trying to tell what he saw.
Right.
When Edward entered the manor, the air went still. No sound could be heard within, even in the dark. Edward could see the toys Bram had been working on laid out waiting to be put together. Dolls, bears, animals with happy faces, but their smiles obscured in the dark. Their eyes were dull and staring at the murderer who had entered their home. Then, the manor released a long, groaning creak, a sound of mourning for its owners, which frightened Edward half to death. Bram is obviously dead at this point, that much is certain, but from the loss of blood from his wounds, pressure mounted on Edward, his fear increasing with every second he spent in that manor. In a panic, he slid his arms under Bram's armpits and walked backwards out the door, pulling Bram out, head first. He dropped the body in the grave next to his wife, leaving himself splattered with blood again. Barely able to lift the shovel, he filled the hole nonetheless. Then he left, his guilt easing with each step home. But this night had become one he would carry with him every day. He notes it's much later, he realized, that the gypsy woman had spoken the truth. There's a gap in the dates after this, about a year. Edward explains for months he had stared out the window looking at the forest. He was waiting for a fiery hand to reach inside, burning flesh catching light to his cabin, followed by a howling so loud and visceral it would shake the foundations of his house, or to hear a slow drag of a body on dirt as it pulled itself somehow toward his home. So he's just sitting there, waiting for something to happen because of what they did. Exactly 1 year later, a child goes missing. His parents said they had put him to bed, and when they went to his room in the morning, his window was open. A red toy sat on the windowsill, and a toy doll, in their children's clothes, sat in the child's bed. So it's human-sized. The red toy was a deep red, the color of old blood. The entire village searched for the boy in the fields, the forest, and every nook and cranny. They searched 4 weeks when another child went missing. Another blood-red toy and doll were left in their place. Though the village searched and searched, they would never find the children who disappeared. Edward thought of Bram's workshop, the toys left behind, and how he had pulled Bram from his home head first, not legs first. He didn't have legs to pull. If I'm not mistaken. 5 children had disappeared in the few months. It was time for Edward to abandon this cursed village with his family for good. It's funny, Edward was assured. Bram returned as an undead night figure, and it was his fault for not carrying him as the gypsy said. But I wonder, it sounded like what Rose did was a curse, wanting revenge on the people that wronged her. What if Lilith possessed Bram's corpse and brought him to life? It could be the demon coming for the kids. I'm not sure what I believe now, to be honest. I know it sounds crazy to think this story is real, but in that diary, the words Edward wrote, you can see it was real to him. And to think the story had been passed down for generations makes me think that Bram followed them, followed the villagers who Rose had cursed maybe. Luckily, we don't live in the same state anymore, but it does have me curious. I wonder if the house is still there, what it would look like. I've decided to do a road trip to Grimville this weekend. Learn a little bit more about Edward and the village, and who knows, maybe see if this Bram is real or just a scary bedtime story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit odd. I like the content of the story. I think it's a little bit odd how it goes from these are the things that happen. Then, like, it's someone reading a diary to you, so it adds, like, that extra filter to it.
Yeah.
In a weird way. And then also the names are kind of cheesy, like Grimville.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, why would you go back if you know that this is a thing, right? Why would you decide, like, oh, I want to go back and learn a little bit more of this history? It just seems a little bad decision making.
Yeah, it's one, I don't know. I thought more was going to happen in the story, especially given how long it was. Except it's like the story of how someone discovered a story, and then that story within it. Like, just make the story within it the story.
Yeah.
Unless this is going to be like a larger part of something else, but like there's no other follow up. It
could have the whatever happened in the diary could have been its own story. Yeah. It didn't need all the extra stuff leading to finding the diary.
Yeah, I agree. But it was good.
Yeah. It was, interesting.
All right. Good one to start the episode. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move into our second story of the show. This one is actually from a spooky friend. And it is from Amber. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to do a full redesign on the website. The website also hasn't been updated in like 100 episodes. That's on me. I'm going to do a full redesign, get an episode or a page for each episode like I had been doing in the past. But what I want to do is add a feature in. So if we do get more Pastatimes in the future, I'll just post them there. So people can go and read and you guys can get full credit, because I think it's really good that people write. I don't want to discourage that, and I really appreciate those of you out there who do and send them to us. And I am always more than happy if you're going to send these still, even if we're not going to have Pastatime episodes, to read them and let you know what I think, and provide, constructive criticism. And I'd be more than happy to put it up somewhere where other people can read it as well. So that said, let's get into Amber's story. And it goes like this. It's called Late Night TV, an Amber original. And it starts out...
I like that title.
I do too. I watch TV to fall asleep. It's a habit that I grew in childhood.
I think a lot of people actually do. It's not rare to find somebody who falls asleep to TV. I know recently we've been putting on stuff to fall asleep to.
Yeah. 100%. I did it multiple times for the first time in a long time.
So this might actually be really relatable.
I don't know. We're about to find out. It continues. I had issues falling asleep as a kid, and it helped me calm down to rest. Because of this, it gradually became impossible to sleep without it. It concerned my parents a little, but I was a fussy kid and they'd do anything to get me to rest. Now, it's just become a nightly routine for me. I get ready for bed, climb under the covers, and then switch on the TV. If there was anything good, I'd sit and watch until eventually I fall asleep. If there wasn't, I just leave it on some antique roadshow or paid programming channel and keep the volume down while I lay down to rest. It didn't matter either way. Just as long as the TV was on, I would be asleep in only a few minutes. This routine was carried out all throughout high school, college, and into adulthood as I entered my first job. I was working late shifts, which meant I got home in the early morning. This was fine. I was used to pulling all-nighters in college anyways. It only meant there'd be hardly anything good to watch. Maybe I'd catch a rerun of a nostalgic show, but otherwise, I was stuck with someone trying to sell me a blender.
I remember, like, Nick at Night. Did you ever watch Nick at Night? Where they had, like, Three's Company and stuff like that.
I would watch some Nick at Night, but most of the shows that they had on, I wasn't really too into. I would usually just, like, because I had a VCR, I'd watch Aliens on repeat, honestly. So, or True Lies.
Now, like, we can just put on Netflix, and then Netflix just goes through it, and then at least when I watch on my iPad, once it gets to the point where it's like continue, it'll turn off my iPad, so I don't have to worry about it. Lizdry
says in our chat, which I normally don't read in the episode, but I think this deserves a shout out. She goes, Toonami, which was 100% my jam until Toonami was over. And then after that, the paid programming shit would kick in. I'd be like, ugh. Nowadays, though, it's kind of funny because to put on something for background noise, I can't put on something too compelling. This is a good example. If I want to watch a movie to fall asleep to, A Million Ways to Die in the West for me is perfect because it's funny and I like it, but I can fall asleep to it. If I put on The Martian with Matt Damon, I will watch it till the end and be like, shit, I should have slept 2 hours ago.
Well, even, what is it, Hot Fuzz? If we put on Hot Fuzz, I'm like, I'll watch the whole thing. I know almost every single word in that fucking movie, but we still stay up and watch it.
Like programming that you can ignore, but are pleasantly listening to in the background to fall asleep to. It's weird. You have to create your own like infomercial almost as like white noise. But all right, I'm going to keep going on because I think we can all relate to the story so far. One particular tiring night of work, I hardly made it through the door before flopping down in bed. I had just enough energy to grab the remote and turn it on, leaving it on whatever channel it was already on. Within a couple of minutes, I was fully passed out. I lifted my head and looked at my alarm clock to see 3 a.m. glowing in red numbers.
Big nope.
I was confused as I had never woken up in the middle of sleeping like this. I frequently woke up in the middle of the night when I was younger, but not in any recent years. I sat up and decided to use this time to change out of my work clothes, but I got distracted by the unfamiliar commercial jingle on the TV. I looked over at a red screen, entranced by the music before the dialogue began. Charisma? Fame? Influence over others? These are the qualities of a great cult leader.
What the what?
The job offer is open in your area. Starting pay, $20 an
Yo.
hour. But wait, there's more. If you call us in the next minute, we'll throw in a bonus deal. The power to get away with any crime of your choosing. Call now and gain a following of hundreds. Today.
Just hundreds?
Sounds pretty fucking dope. All of the words appeared... That was not in the story. That was just me. All of the words appeared across the screen in cheesy animations. It made my sleep-deprived brain laugh at the number 666 flashed in bold and a timer slowly counting down in the corner of the screen. My mind was still half asleep as I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. This is a bad decision you're making.
Yep. No.
I didn't have any more control over my body. It was though I was being directed into the motions. I dialed 666 after a few sloppy tries. It went through. I held the phone to my ear, still giggling, as someone picked up on the other end. Hello, Daniel. We've been hoping to reach you for a while.
Oof.
I could hardly remember the conversation after that introduction, but long story short, I have an interview on Monday.
I think that's a funny story.
It's a great fucking story. I absolutely love this story. So thank you so much, Amber, for sending that to us. It's really, really good. So I think there was some other part of this particular email where it just mentions that this wasn't actually an assignment for school or any class. This was just like fun. And
it sounds fun.
This is really good. This is one of my favorite creepypastas we've ever run the show. So shout out to you, Amber, for writing that and sending it to us. We sincerely appreciate it, and we appreciate you. So before we move into our next story, we are going to take a really quick commercial break. And we're back.
All right, so my next story is titled The Wanderer, which just gives me Fallout vibes.
Yeah, 100%. That song immediately started playing in my head. All
right, so it begins. Back in the 1990s. I hate that it's like back in the 1990s.
I mean, it's 30 years ago.
Oh, so. Shit, no!
Welcome to being old.
Stop! Oh, no. All right, back in the 1990s, a girl committed... Oh, no, that's sad now. Back in the 1990s, a girl committed suicide after viewing an image posted on an old news group. The image was of a figure, which some identified as a woman standing in the middle of a lonely road. The figure is transparent to the point that its legs are barely visible and is illuminated by an unknown light source coming from the direction of the camera. Whether it's headlights, a handheld flashlight, or the light of the camera itself isn't known for sure, as the actual source of the image has never been identified. No facial features can be made out, but the figure is most easily identified by its long, bony appendages, which partly resemble a spider's legs. Those who have seen the image or know of its existence have come to know the figure as the Wanderer. I'm like looking at this picture and I'm trying to see if I see it.
I think it's just a picture of a road.
Okay.
I don't see a picture, or I don't see an image of a woman with spider legs on there.
Okay. The first known Wanderer account occurred in 1996. Jane, a college girl who was visiting her family during the holiday season, had an interest in the paranormal. She saw the Wanderer image on a news group along with a message reading, "Do you see me? I can see you too." Fuck that. Dozens of other users saw the same post. Most didn't think much of it, just that it was somehow, quote-unquote, funny. Some actually complained that they experienced headaches while they looked at the image, and similar claims have been made by others since. According to Jane's family, she suffered from nightmares in the nights after seeing the image. She claimed she would wake up and see the Wanderer outside her window. Sometimes it would scrape the glass with its spider-like limbs. You know, I was talking to Jules about spiders today, and spiders are just...
I hate them.
Yep, big no.
Here's the thing, we talked about this the other day, too, is that people that are like, oh, spiders, they like control pests, and they do all this, they do all that. They also fucking bite you with no provocation, because they'll bite you in your sleep, which makes them assholes.
But it's because they crawl into your space, and then you move around in your sleep, and then they're like, oh, fuck, and then bite you.
Still.
So.
My space, asshole. I'm trying to sleep.
But usually it would just stand there and stare at her. She would find herself unable to move while in its presence, as if many unseen hands were holding her down. It's all the legs. Even if she closed her eyes, she would still see it. Her family was sure she had been frightened by an image online and was having nightmares as a result, until Jane complained of seeing the Wanderer in her waking life as well. She was convinced it was following her. She would see it even if she was in a room full of people or out in public, even though no one else saw anything. Jane's family feared for her sanity, but only assured her that the Wanderer wasn't real. Jane, however, only got worse. She began going to extreme lengths to stay awake at night. It started out just with caffeine and staying active, but quickly graduated to cutting herself and screaming all through the night.
Oh my God.
Before long, she wasn't sleeping at all. She was convinced that if she slept again, the Wanderer would take her. Nope. Her family knew they couldn't just wait and hope for the best. Jane needed help. But when Jane's mother knocked on her daughter's bedroom door, she received no answer. She carefully opened the door, not wanting to disturb or startle Jane, but she still heard nothing. Jane wasn't in her bed. She wasn't sitting at her computer. She didn't appear to be in her room at all, until her mom checked the closet. There, Jane was found curled in the corner, blood reddened the front of her body, having drained from the long slit across her throat.
Oh my God.
She was clutching a blood-stained note which read, "It can't have me now." Jane's case is not isolated. Through the rest of the 90s, dozens of others went missing or committed suicide after viewing the image of the Wanderer. Since the turn of the century, despite my best efforts at locating the image, it seems to have disappeared. Recently, though, I posted on a news group asking if anyone had heard of the Wanderer. I've done this many times before, and usually there's one or two people who have heard the story, but no one has seen the image. This time, it was different. Shortly after posting, I received an email in my inbox. The subject of the email was, "I can see you." The body only read, "Do you see me? I can see you too." There was an image attached with the message. I can't verify whether it's the real Wanderer image or not, but I must warn you that if you choose to view the image, you do so at your own risk.
Right on.
I would want to know, if they saw the image, did they have nightmares? Writer, as the writer, you'd be like, end the story with, "I'm starting to see, have nightmares. I'm starting to see weird stuff. I want to know. Tell me."
I feel like this story follows the same pattern as other creepypastas we've read in the past about forbidden images or things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's still pretty good. I will say, I agree with your assessment of did they view it? If they did, it could end on, it's predictable to end that way, but it could be ending something like, "I had my first nightmare tonight," or something like that, which is still kind of cheesy. But either way, it was solid. It was short.
Solid.
It was good.
Yeah.
So, good stuff, Wanderer writer.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move into my final story and the final Pastatime of Pastatime, unless we decide to resurrect Pastatime, which I don't know if that's going to happen. This one is called The Candleman, and I did check to see if we've read it before because it sounded familiar, but we have not.
Is it because it kind of sounds like Candle Cove?
Maybe, and Slender Man.
Yes.
We figured it out. It's written by an anonymous author, so I don't have to give them credit. All right. Starts out with a nursery rhyme, and it starts out like this. "Over the hill and through the moor, the candle man comes walking up to your door." The cadence just doesn't work right there. "He lights up a candle and walks to your bed, leaves the candle in the window, and leaves with your head."
All right. That's creepy.
That's the nursery rhyme my grandma used to tell me when I was young. Your grandma's fucked up.
What's the Freddy Krueger one?
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your doors. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, better stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again.
Oh, okay.
I knew it. Because those movies fucked me up. All right, keep going. The grandmother told this creepy nursery rhyme to the kid. "I remember that little rhyme terrifying me as a child, as I cowered under the covers in the bed at her small country cottage, too scared to sleep. She described him as a tall, pale man in a robe who liked to kill little children."
Is this Freddy Krueger?
Why is it that when people back in the day needed to deter a kid from something, they always made up something where it's like, "You'll be brutally fucking murdered"? It was never something else. It was always like brutal murder or dragged away or something like that.
Growing up, my mom was like, "If you whistle at night, the demons will enter you," or stuff like that. It's crazy stuff like that. Their ghosts will come for you. It was... I don't know why. Parents do that to their kids. I feel like you're going to do that to your kids.
I'm not going to make up shit where the consequence of if you put your hand on a hot stove, you get fucking murdered. It's like,
well, that one you could just be like, you get brutally burned.
but it's honestly, usually the stakes are much lower and the consequences are much higher, is all I'm saying. All right, I'm going to keep going. The grandma said, and whenever he killed, Grandma would say in a hushed, oh fuck. And whenever he killed, Grandma would say in a hushed voice, he would leave a ghostly candle in their window.
What?
At that, she would yell out and make me jump back in fright while she shrieked with laughter.
Sounds like she's a mean
Yeah,
grandma.
no shit. I'm more afraid of the grandma than the Candleman. The Candleman. Even the name gives me chills. It seemed like such a horrible, scary thing to say to a child, but then again, Grandma was a scary woman. She was small, with weathered skin and cruel, sunken eyes. I mean, she probably didn't like you because you called her skin weathered.
And you said her eyes were cruel.
And sunken, that always seemed to glare at me.
You're a cruel child.
After Grandpa died, she hardly ever left her house, just sat in her rocking chair telling stories of the Candleman and taking delight in my fear, laughing madly when I jumped. I found her such a disgusting woman.
Oh, that's so mean. Your poor grandma.
Anyway, this is probably why she'd tell you these stories. Anyway, when I grew up, I learned that it wasn't her fault, really. Grandpa's death had shaken her up, messed with her head. She didn't know what was appropriate anymore. Grandpa was only alive when I was a baby, and I never knew him, but I learned when I was older how much he had meant to Grandma.
You didn't see the sun until you were already a man.
Without him, she had been broken. She died when I was 13, and I guess it didn't really come to me as much of a shock. She was incredibly old and frail. Just take a swing at her casket, why don't you?
Right? Like,
Jesus
what
fucking
the
Christ.
fuck?
Now I'm 30, with a wife and a little girl. We have a comfortable suburban home, and I couldn't be happier. There has been one thing that's shaken me up recently, however. However isn't needed. It was a silly thing, but it still scared the hell out of me. A nightmare. In the dream, I was in my bedroom, comfy under the covers.
And then Freddy comes out with his claws and is like, stab, 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 stab.
When I heard a tune being played on the piano downstairs. I knew it was being played as soon as I heard it. The Candleman.
He has a song.
Apparently.
You know that
Wouldn't
song?
it be fucking awesome if they created like the scariest horror icon, but his song was fucking jock jams? Like some of the way to like da 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 da.
No. Well, have you ever heard the Candyman?
Yeah, everyone's heard the Candyman.
I'm hearing like the Candyman can, but like the Candleman can.
Wow. Who can rip your eyes out?
The Candleman can.
Goosebumps ran up my arms and neck, and ice filled my stomach. Ooh, I thought it was going to be your veins. I sprinted down the narrow staircase into the living room where I saw a tall, pale figure in a robe holding a candle, leaving through the open door. The Candleman. He was about 6'4" or 5". Oh my god, he sounds super hot. With dead-looking, beady eyes and a wide, evil grin. I woke up suddenly in a cold sweat, turned on the light, and read until I was ready to sleep again. I put the dream down to too many drinks and the coming of Halloween, but it freaked me out anyways. And that takes me up to yesterday, Halloween night. I was trudging back from a party, not drunk, I don't drink, but still woozy from tiredness. You just said you had too many drinks before. Whatever. I thrust my hands in my pockets for warmth. Whilst I was walking back through the crisp orange leaves, Quispy, the poem of the Candleman popped into my head. My heart began to thud as I walked down the poorly lit street, leaves crunching underfoot, the pale moon casting long shadows along the path. In my mind's eye, I could see the Candleman, thin and ghostly, running up to me and cutting off my head in one swing of an axe. Silly, I know, but the dark can make my imagination run wild sometimes. I arrived on my road and began to calm down. I felt silly for having let the poem get to me. I was perfectly safe under the streetlights. As I arrived at my front yard, I noticed a tall man in a robe standing at the end of the street, his face shrouded in darkness. He appeared to be staring at me. Once again, images of the Candleman flooded through my head, sending my heartbeat into overdrive. I shook it off. It's just a tall man out for Halloween. Nothing to be scared of, I assured myself, as I attempted to slow my breathing. Then I looked up at my house, hearing demonic laughter from the man's direction. An icicle of terror stabbed at my heart. There, in my daughter's window, flickering softly, was a candle.
Fuck that.
Chase after him and get her head back.
Oh my god.
That was the end, by the way.
What? But you know she's dead in there.
Yeah, oh yeah. 100. Or his wife is fucking really mean with her jokes. Just saying, because why the fuck was this guy at a Halloween party without his wife?
Oh, that's true, too.
This thing is obviously written by someone who's not in a committed relationship where you do things together, because, like, Halloween party is something you're going to go to with your spouse.
Or is not an actual, like, parent.
It should have been, like, him and the wife walking home together and thinking about how they left the daughter with the babysitter they trusted and da-da-da-da-da. But, yeah. Either way, it's still pretty creepy, and I enjoyed it, and it was good for the final Pastatime of Pastatime.
Yeah, I think all the stories chosen for this episode of Pastatime were solid choices.
Were you going to high-five me there for a second?
No, I did this.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right on.
I mean, do you want to high-five? We can high-five.
Sure.
Freebie.
There you go. And that, my spooky friends, is the end of Pastatime. From here on out, we will have announcements in the future about what's going to be taking its place on the Wednesday live shows at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on youtube.com/scarish and twitch.tv/scarishpodcast. We are probably going to be doing something a little bit different, still scary, spooky, horror themed. I'm pretty excited about it, and we'll see what comes of it. But next week, we'll be doing story time, so please join us for that. If you have a story you would like to send us, which we call homegrown horrors, which are, stories that are real, that either happened to you, a friend, a family member, whatever, supernatural, spiritual, coincidental.
Send us those stories.
True crime, extraterrestrial. Send an email to storytime@scarish.com or go to scarish.com, the website, click on contact us, fill out that form, and send it to us that way. Or hit us up on social medias. Twitter is @scarishpod, Instagram is @scarishpodcast, and Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. We would love to hear from you. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can also go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1, so that's Q. Badge of Honor patrons and above, that's $10 and above. I'll be mailing out some lanyards, and I think is it a magnet or a sticker? I forget. But something like that will be sent out very, very soon for the summer season. I already have stuff planned for future seasons this year, so hopefully you guys like it. It'll be great. But yeah. Oh, and if you're not into the monthly donation type thing, you can also go to ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast, and that's totally okay to donate at also.
Indeed. So thank you so much to everyone who supports us in all the different ways. We're happy to be back, and we're happy you folks joined us for it. So that is everything we have for this final episode of Pastatime. So Robin, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.